Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 113 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Erin, Stevie's mom. Stevie just died in February of this year, so Erin's grief is really quite fresh. Regular listeners of the show will certainly notice a big similarity between this story and episode 97, Eliza's mom, which we will briefly discuss in the episode as well. I do want to take a minute here before we start to once again talk about the live stream that will be coming up this next Tuesday, November 16th, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This is the time that Gwen and I will be doing a live stream on kind of preparing for the holidays and what grieving in the holidays can look like. So be sure to tune in to that and come with any questions that you might have as well. This will be on Facebook Live or on my YouTube channel. So both are under Always Andy's Mom. I am also going to announce that next month we're going to do something similar. So the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's, we will be again having some live streams. So the Christmas episode will be that Thursday right before Christmas. And we'll again be Gwen and I hosting some questions, kind of last minute questions before that Christmas holiday. So talking about that, and maybe a bit of a part 2 of what we start right before Thanksgiving. And then the week between Christmas and New Year's, I will be having 3 of my favorite guests that I've had, and 3 women who have all become quite close friends to me. We will be having kind of a post-Christmas chat. So those 3 women are Stephanie, whom I've talked about many times and who's now at Starlight Ministries, Chrissy, Caleb's mom, who has been on the show twice before, and Demetra, who was most recently on the show as well and has brought me kind of different guests from Toronto. I picked these 3 women in particular because we are each 1 year apart in our journeys. So Stephanie is 4 years out, I'm 3 years out, Chrissy's 2 years out, and Demetra is 1 year out. And I think we will be able to offer some kind of unique perspectives that way and just have a nice discussion as to what Christmas was like and how things may be changing over time. So be sure to watch for more announcements regarding dates and times for those live streams as well. An additional reminder, if you are starting to do any Christmas shopping and going to be on Amazon, be sure to go to smile.amazon.com and pick Always Andy's Mom as the charity that you'd like to support, because I certainly would appreciate any support I can get. You can also go to the website at any point and make some donation as well if you feel inclined to do so. So thank you so much for supporting the show and for supporting me. And now I really want you to enjoy listening to Erin, Stevie's mom. Thank you so much, Erin, for agreeing to come on the Always Andy's Mom podcast. I am just delighted to be able to talk to you today about your daughter, Stevie.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. So why don't you just start out by telling us about Stevie and who she was as a little baby?
Yeah, Stevie was the happiest baby. She came into the world real quick and immediately just completed our family. She was always, anybody who knew her knows that she was always laughing, eating. She would eat anything. I would put a cup of, broccoli in front of her and she would devour all of it, which was very different than my oldest child. So she was just wanted to be involved and just happy to, to be pulled around by her older sister, and just very fun, always dancing. Yeah, she was just a joy to be around. She was wonderful.
So she was your second then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was little. Her older sister is about a year and a half older. Her older sister is Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
And she just immediately fell in love with her, and they were just great together. Her older sister always wanted to be involved in, helping change diapers or getting her dressed or whatever it was. And she's a boss. So she was very.
She's a firstborn.
Exactly. Stevie had to be very, laid back, and she was great with all of it. So it was very good.
How much age gap? Excuse me. How many months was it then?
I think it was a year and a half.
A year and a half, 18 months. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Yeah. So they were very close. They were great. Always dancing. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you live in Colorado? Is that right? No. Where do you live?
Yes.
Okay.
Colorado. Yep.
That's right. Okay.
Yes. So it's the changing of the seasons and getting out in the wintertime. Stevie was born December 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we my husband and I also have December birthdays. So
fun.
it was kind of a whole, month of fun. And my oldest her birthday's in June. So she's kind of a little bit different, but we had a good time.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any fun, special stories to tell about Stevie?
So there's this song called, I don't know what the song's actually called, but the lyrics are "bounce that booty like a basketball." It's hilarious. And she would dance to this song, and we actually played it at her celebration of life, but she would dance to this song as soon as it came on. She would be so excited and come running out and started dancing. It was great. So that's one of our best memories of her. And I've got 20 videos of her dancing to this song. It's hilarious.
Oh, that's so funny. I think it's so funny how some kids are really attracted to one song, and that song comes on and it's just it's irresistible, that they're just going to dance no matter what, and no matter what's going on or who's around, or oh my gosh.
Exactly. Yeah, she loved it. So, and she was just always wanted to be involved. I would, be nursing her sitting on the couch, and somebody would walk in and she'd pop her head up, staring around, just want and make sure everything was cool, and that, she'd go back to nursing. And so we said that she had FOMO. She had the fear of missing out on everything.
Very good. I like that term. That's what it sounds like for sure. Don't let anything happen without me knowing about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Always had to be in the know.
Mm-hmm.
So
mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was awesome.
So why don't you go on now and talk a little bit about what happened to Stevie?
Yeah, my husband and I were in Las Vegas for a friend's birthday party, or birthday. We went out for the weekend. He and I went a night before on Friday. It was the first time we'd ever left Stevie. We'd co-sleep and nurse. And so we were just kind of, it was nerve-wracking, but at the same time, I was kind of touched out and okay, let's have a weekend to kind of reset. So we left, and on Sunday morning we were in the airport, and I got a phone call from our family friend who the girls were staying with. And I answered it. We were going through the gift shop trying to pick out little toys to bring home for them. I answered it, and she said, "There's been an accident. The baby's not breathing. I called the ambulance and they took her." And I just remember yelling, what, my brain heard what she said, but I could not process. And my husband's looking at me, and I'm like, what? And it felt 5 minutes that I was doing that. It was probably 15 seconds. And my husband, she goes, hand the phone to Dalton. So I hand the phone over to my husband, and I just ran out of the store. And I was in the middle of the, terminal, just screaming, oh my God, what is happening? Thinking. And so he comes out, and we're sitting in the terminal on a bench and very upset. And he calls his dad and his brother to get down to the hospital. They didn't let anybody go with her, so she was all alone, and they live pretty close by. And I called a friend of mine who is a nurse, and she went, also headed to the hospital. And I want to say it was maybe 25 minutes later, after, we're calling all of our people and trying to get a hold of people, and he talked to the doctor. They called and said that they couldn't revive her.
Oh my goodness.
And get her back. And so I just remember being get me out of here. I need to leave this airport. I need to
Yeah.
get out now.
Yeah.
And we still had like an hour before our flight.
Oh my.
So they ended up coming and kind of putting us in a family restroom area because I had like fallen to the ground and was screaming. And so they put us in this family restroom where we like, I just remember like rolling around on the ground, like, what is going on? We need to do something, being so hopeless. Like there was nothing we could do. You know, they came and got us and said, you know, your flight is boarding. And just thinking like in my head, like, what is happening? Like, you know, when my friend got to the hospital before we heard that she had passed, she was, his dad had said, you know, she's intubated. And I'm like, okay, like as a nurse, I know like kids, respiratory, like we can handle this. Like we can get past whatever, like this is okay. You know, it's not a death sentence. We can do this. And then once my friend got there, she said she's intubated and they're still doing compressions. And then I just knew like this wasn't going to end well. You know, it'd been 45 minutes since the first call. Like this just wasn't going to end well. So they came and got us and put us on the flight. We were like right in the front row. And I just remember like, I don't even think I blinked, just like staring straight the entire, you know, time we were on this plane and just being like in such disbelief. And just like wondering what happened. Like she's healthy. She's never been sick. Like it was just, everything was playing in my head and we were on this airplane and couldn't talk to anybody. Like it was just so isolating. And we got to the airport when we landed in Denver and we just ran straight to the car. I remember like noises coming out of me that like I couldn't control. Like I kept it in the whole flight and then I was just like hysterical. So we went running to the car. And as we like landed, the coroner came and took her. They said that they tried to wait as long as they could. So they took her and they told us to go to the police station. And I was like, in my head, like, what happened? Like just so out of left field. So we go there and that was just protocol because she had died in a home. And they, you know, had started their investigation or started their whatever and said there was no foul play, no anything, you know, bad. They don't know what happened. But we did that and met some of her family there and then went by to our good family friend where she was staying and saw them and they were just absolutely distraught. So the coroner took her, that was on a Sunday. We didn't get to see her until Wednesday.
Oh my goodness.
We had to like wait until, and that was Wednesday night. They let us come and like see her for like an hour and her viewing was Thursday and then her celebration of life was Friday, but just out of left field. And this whole time, you know, we're just like, so we had to wait probably 2 months before we got, you know, the autopsy back and the toxicology. And they, on the death certificate says undetermined. And we are part of now, like the SUDC Foundation has been really helpful. And that's the sudden unexplained death in childhood that I didn't even know anything about. And it's children who are a year to 18 years, which is pretty crazy. And like, as a nurse, I was like, I definitely want to read this autopsy. I want to know, like, and it just made me mad. Like she was healthy. There was no like anything on this piece of paper that they could tell me a reason why my baby was gone. She was perfectly healthy and it's frustrating. It's really hard. I feel like there's I mean, obviously we're going to grieve and you know, move forward, but there's nothing, I feel like there's no reason to grieve. Like why, you know, there's that question will always be there. I will never, you know, accept that it was just because, you know, that part's really hard.
That is really incredibly hard.
Really hard.
Yeah.
And I had never even heard of it. Nobody, like I'd heard of SIDS and like you get to 6 months and you're like, okay, we're doing good. You get to a year, you're like, perfect, we're great. Like moving on, like you never have to think about that again. And, you know, she was 14 months old and it was just a very, you know, unexpected situation. You know, you hear a lot of these kids dying of SUDC that had fevers the night before or had a history of seizures or different things. And like,
well, and I've actually had several people on that had sudden unexplained death and epilepsy that they, several now, which is much more common than I thought that was too.
Yeah, it's just so awful.
And then I've had kids on with SIDS too. And you're right in that the general population definitely feels like you hit a certain age and you're good. I've
You're
actually
fine.
had parents come in with their kids as young as 4 months, which is actually the peak age of SIDS, thinking they're good now,
Mhm.
which
Yeah,
I was like, actually, this is the highest
this is it.
age right
Yeah.
here at 4 months, which people don't know. And then others come in at 6 months like, well, we're totally good now. Nope, you're
Yeah.
really not. And I mean, you don't want to freak people out, but yeah. And then now I think after losing Andy and after talking to so many families, now have seen so much more. And so
Hmm.
it's even harder for me to be reassuring, even though it's exceedingly rare, right? It's exceedingly
Yeah.
rare. But
Yeah.
now, we know things that we wish we didn't know.
Yeah. And as a nurse, I thought I don't remember this in my, peds rotation at all, ever learning about SUDC. And maybe I did, it was, quite some time ago, and I didn't have children. So it was maybe a little different in that aspect, but I don't know if it would have been better to know
Right.
about it beforehand. Like it's nothing was ever going to stop it, from happening. But I don't know. That's a hard, like,
It's really hard, and it's very funny and timely in some ways that just yesterday I was reading, somebody posted something on Twitter, and it clearly she had heard of someone who died just like this, just
mhm,
like your daughter did, and she started panicking and freaking out and said, I thought we were good because her child
mhm,
is over a year old. I don't check on her in the night anymore. I don't watch her breathe anymore like I used to. And she was clearly
mhm.
very, very panicked on Twitter, like, this has now changed my life. And now I'm going to have to be getting up and watching and seeing if she's still breathing, which,
Yeah.
of course, would not help at all.
No,
It wouldn't
like
help
at all.
in the least because
Mm-mm.
when these kids die, it's we can't do anything, which is what's
Yeah.
so incredibly hard, is that you have no idea
Yeah.
why it happened. And also, had somebody walked in that room, whatever, I don't know how long she'd been
Hmm.
gone, but had they walked in an hour earlier, it wouldn't have made a bit of difference, probably, right? So
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and we were told, she had woken up about 2:30, and our friend put her pacifier back in, and she laid back down and kind of rubbed her back a little bit. And then I believe it was like 6:30 or 7 is when she went to pick her up to take her to go start making coffee, and they were getting ready for church and all these things, and like her arm kind of fell. And she like looked down and was like, oh my God, because she was warm and she was a little sweaty, but she always slept sweaty. That was just,
yeah,
my kids are hot blooded and that's just what it is. So she didn't think anything abnormal about it. But I've heard some of these kids, what happened, it's 30 minutes after they lay down for a nap,
yeah.
or it's 5 minutes after they fall asleep on the couch,
And
or, whatever it is. I mean, it's crazy.
yeah, so then I think about this woman and how now she's completely panicked and going to feel like
Hmm.
she's going to have to do all of this stuff, and it's not going to help anything. So that goes back to your point of, would I have been happier having known? Probably not. Right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
probably not. If you would have then lived that life more in fear,
Yeah.
it's sometimes better to be blissfully ignorant of the horribleness that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. If I was gonna know that was what was gonna happen, I would have wanted to know it was that weekend, but
Right?
that's
Right.
impossible, like that's just not a thing. I mean, it's crazy. Like I said, we were out of town for the first time and we co-slept and bed shared. And so, I mean, it could have been a very different situation if I had woken up in the morning and she was sleeping with me. I mean, that would have been,
Right. Then you would have blamed yourself in some ways, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
devastating. So not that I'm, happy it happened somewhere else, but I think it played out the way it was.
Kind of supposed to in
I
some
don't know
ways,
if
yeah.
it's, yeah. Yeah.
You're my second mom that I've had on who was on a trip to Las Vegas.
I listened to that one. Yes. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I
Yes.
know. I thought when you were telling me that, it was like, it was so crazy because I feel like I have heard this before. I mean, she
Yes.
wasn't at the airport. She was still at the hotel, but
Yes. And we have talked about, like, if it had happened, we got the call when we were still in the hotel, what that would have, looked like. I mean, I don't know that I could have, I think the other mom was like in a wheelchair.
yeah, pushed through this casino and yeah.
Yeah.
Because her daughter just had died in her sleep too. She had had a history of
Yeah.
epilepsy. So
Yeah. It's just such a crazy, I mean, I look back, my life a year ago and I just couldn't fathom. It's been over a little over 8 months. It happened in February of this year, February 7th. And I don't know. We spent the last year, fixing up our old house and selling and buying a new house. And so we were, really wrapped up in that. And when we were on the trip in Las Vegas, I decided, like what we were going to do with her room and what bed I wanted and what, little things like that we were going to start kind of doing.
Right.
And to come home to not being able to do any of that.
She was transitioning from being a baby to being a toddler, right? So you were transitioning from a baby room to a toddler room for her.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we talked a lot about like her sleep while we were there. She had been up the last, couple of weeks before we went on this trip. Like she was getting up a lot in the middle of the night and didn't want to sleep well. And my husband would go drive her around at 2:00 in the morning or we'd come down and sleep with her on the couch. Actually, that Thursday night was the last night that we had her and I slept with her down on the couch and she slept great. And, it was just kind of our time together. And so it just kind of, I'm lucky that I have those memories of that. And then for her to, die in her sleep was just so out of left field for both of us. It was just crazy. We have a very great support group of friends and family who, were here. And my best friend's sister was actually in Utah for her oldest daughter's water polo game. At the same time we were in Las Vegas. She's from California. And I had called her because I couldn't get a hold of anybody in the hotel. They were all still sleeping because it was so early. And so I called her to, try to get a hold of them, to wake them up and whatnot. And she ended up driving from Utah to Las Vegas and they all got on a flight back to Colorado and they were all here for over a week and were able to help with everything and put on the service and that kind of stuff. Cause I don't know, I couldn't have done that by myself. That was, I mean, we, to go sit down and we had her cremated and, what urn do you want? And what music do you want played at the viewing and I'm just like,
I know.
I didn't think about any of this stuff, it's just, it was great to have everybody there to help for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You just can't do all of that stuff. I mean, I've said this before. Yeah. I like couldn't even do my hair. I mean, it was like simple, silly things that I couldn't do at all. So the idea of planning all of this, I mean, my husband and I picked out scripture. I remember we did that. I talked to Andy's choir director and I just put him completely in charge of the music because, music was such a special part of Andy's life and he arranged all of it and it was beautiful. But there's just so little that I feel like I can do. And then the afterwards, we had kind of a reception and all of that. That just was completely handled by somebody else because I couldn't even think about it. I didn't even eat,
Yeah. You're just like on autopilot and you just are kind of, I don't know. I feel like I didn't get out of sweats for weeks and just kind of let everybody else kind of help me, to get all that stuff done. And it was a lot.
Yeah.
Especially when, you have other children, you've got to explain that to them and.
Yeah. Talk about that with Charlie.
This happened in February. So she was a little over 3.5. She's 4 now.
Uh-huh.
And she was sleeping downstairs with the oldest daughter of our friend. So all of this happened upstairs. The ambulance came and took her before Charlie was ever woken up, which I am very thankful for because I would not have wanted her like that. We met some family at the police department and Charlie was there. So we took Charlie with us and we went back to our friend's house, to see them. And she's like, "Are we going to pick up Stevie?" And I was like, "No, honey, we're not going to pick up Stevie right now." And she just kind of saw everybody upset. She didn't really get it. And so when we got home, I couldn't bring myself to use the words died or that she was dead. I just couldn't say it. So I told her that Stevie was our angel now and she's in heaven and, she's not going to come back, but she loves us so much and she's always with us. And we have really tried. I mean, we have her pictures everywhere. Charlie now will, go outside and play and we'll take a picture and put it down and talk to Stevie and take her with her. And so we really want her involved in everything that we do. My my biggest fear was that Charlie's so little that she's going to forget, her moments with Stevie, and she might not remember, on her own, but we've got lots of pictures and videos and things. And we just will always, her second birthday is December 1st, and this will be her first birthday without her. And she only got her first birthday. And because of quarantine and all of that, we didn't do a party. So we've been talking about it, and Charlie wants to do a rainbow party for her. Rainbows are kind of our symbol for Stevie, and we've seen them everywhere since all of this. So it's been comforting. And it's crazy when, she was, like I said, 3.5, and the empathy that she had, she would hear me, she'd be somewhere else completely different in the house and would hear me cry and would come running. I'm right here, Mommy. I'm right here. I'm right here. And, there was a day a couple months ago that my husband and I were kind of having a meltdown on the couch, and she goes and fills up bags of ice, and she goes, "Here, this is for your heart. It's hurting." And I was just like, oh my gosh, you're just the sweetest, it's,
that is so precious. Yeah.
Yeah. As much as we try to, not always be upset, I think it's healthy for her to see us hurting, and then how we, dry our tears and get up the next day and we try again.
Yeah. It is you are so right there. I mean, kids need to see you grieve. They do. And it's not healthy for you to hold it all back from them. I know you want to protect them, but they need to see that Stevie mattered, and that you miss her, and that how much you love her. It makes them feel, I think, more secure in their place in the house.
Yeah. Especially when they can't express what they're feeling. Yeah. I can tell, she woke up the other day and went into her room and was just standing and staring at a picture of Stevie, and then goes over, puts her head on the bed. She can't tell me what she's feeling, but she knows that it's safe to feel it, and that it's okay to let that out. And that's what I'm trying to, show her and let her know that it's normal, and that, as a family, I want her to see that we'll get through it together.
Yeah.
It's been hard. It's been hard for sure. Charlie is definitely the light of our lives. She's keeping us together for sure. She's great.
I recently had the interview with Michelle, who did grief parenting. I don't know if you've listened to that yet, but talking about that would be good for you, because she does talk about how it's good to show your emotions, and then to talk about theirs, and to even say, it looks like you're having a sad day, or are you remembering Stevie right now, or just invite them to share a little bit, how that can be really helpful.
Definitely.
I know it's something Gwen has said in the past too, that she talks about how that they have something called, I think it's her grandfather that died, and so when grandma's sad, then it's it's her mother actually. So I was thinking about from her kid's perspective, and that when her mom is sad and missing her late husband, they'll say, oh, grandma's having a papa moment, that she's thinking of Papa.
Yeah.
And so we have talked about that in our family, that I will ask the kids, is it just an Andy day? Are you just having an Andy day today? And I think it's been nice to be able to talk about it. And obviously you can't do the exact same thing like that for Charlie, because that will be a little more difficult. But still, to be able to be like, this is okay to talk about, it's...
yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Definitely. It is. Like I said, this is the hardest thing we've ever gone through, but it's amazing to see the resilience and empathy in Charlie is just unreal. It's great.
Yeah. So talk about your grief journey a little bit, and even from those early days, I mean, I think about how difficult that must have been to not be able to see her until Wednesday.
Definitely, it was so hard. And I haven't been to a lot of funerals or viewings, a few when I was younger, but with a child, when we got to the funeral home, and she said, do you want me to go pick her up, so when you walk in the room I can hand her to you? And I was just like, well, yeah, she's my baby. Like, yes, I want to hold her. And walking through those doors, I just remember like sound coming out that I like didn't even know I could make. I don't know. And just like, it wasn't, obviously she wasn't the same, but she was. It was such a weird moment. And I think I've really struggled with that, with her. She just looked different. She didn't really have a smile on her face when that's all we always saw. And so I think that part's been really hard. And then having her cremated and just being like, where is she? I don't know. It's just it's been difficult. We've tried, I've been going to counseling and doing those things. We've tried some kind of grief counseling together and separate. And it's just a journey, like they say, is up and down and up and down. Like grieving is not a linear thing. There's some days where I'm like, okay, I'll be fine. And I can, keep moving forward. And then, the week leading up to Mother's Day, this May, complete wreck. Like I could not function for the entire week. Like it was insane. And I feel like sometimes the buildup is even harder than like the actual day was. Mm-hmm. And we'll get some of that this year with the holidays and things. But it definitely is it's a challenge. Our society doesn't talk about grieving, and it's just kind of like this thing that happens and then kind of everybody else goes on their way and you're still grieving. And I think especially with a child, it makes people uncomfortable. Yep. But I refuse to not talk about it. Like I'm going to keep talking about her. It's just it's part of my grief journey is to do that. And we did an angel walk last month in honor of her. And I just want to continue to do things that, kind of force people to remember her and talk about her.
Well, and I think your instance is even worse than many in that it was completely out of the blue, completely unexpected, and she was completely healthy. And that's scary for people. That's scary for people to think you had no way to avoid this, right? You think of other ones and like, oh yeah, but their kid had this illness or like a drug overdose or something like that. Could never happen to me. I mean, even some car accident kinds of things like, well, my kids are always buckled and I have the best car seat ever and this could never happen. And so I think you're constantly, as from the outside, people are trying to come up with reasons that this could not happen to them. And they feel really bad for you. And I'm so sorry that this horrible thing happened to you. But couldn't happen to me.
It's not going to happen to me.
And for you, you can't say that. They can't say that. They can't look at you and say, well, that happened to her because there is no why.
Yeah, there is no reason.
There's no reason at all. And that is so scary. That's like the woman on Twitter, right? Why she's completely freaking out. And in her case, she thinks there is something she can do, which there isn't. Unfortunately, I did not reply to her like, you would never be able to stop it anyway, because that's not going to help her feel any better. Yeah. But it's just, it makes it worse for people. It makes it so much worse, I think, from that.
And I think in regards to like the grieving process, we dropped off our healthy, happy, giggling baby on a Friday. And next Wednesday, we held our dead child. Like we didn't get the process of like watching her in the hospital, or not that I would ever have wanted to see that or make that decision to take her or whatever it is, but like we didn't, that piece was just missing. Like, so our brains to like process that is so difficult because we didn't have this time to say goodbye or to see that, I don't know. It's
I can absolutely 100% relate because, I'm in the car. We're on our way to a baseball game. I'm talking to Andy about how when we get home from the game, I'm going to find him Lord of the Rings in the office so he can start to read it. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting on the grass on the side of the road. I look over my shoulder and I see 3 people doing CPR on my child from a ways. So I'm like 25 feet away. and I start screaming hysterically, making those kind of noises, right? And saying, all I kept saying, I know I kept saying over and over again, is please God, please God, please God, please God. I never said anything else. That's all I said. And then, of course, the firemen are like, get this woman out of here, right? Because there are people everywhere. And I mean, I can't even tell you. I think we counted on the, and our attorney counted through the police report how many ambulances were there, and I think there were like 6 and 3 fire trucks, and like it was crazy. And so they just like shuttled me off and then put me in an ambulance and told me, you know, despite our best efforts, we were unable to save your son. And I didn't get to go see him. Like I never saw him until the funeral home on Sunday, and this was Wednesday night. So I had one difference in that I saw like seconds of CPR from 25 feet away, but I have this regret in my mind, like, why didn't I ask to hold him? Why didn't I make them let me out of the ambulance? But you know, I had a cut and burns and concussion, and they wanted me to get to the hospital to get myself, you know, to get medical care too. But such a regret, right? That I didn't get to hold my baby one more time. Yeah. Because by then, now it's days later, and, you know, it's just different.
It's not the same.
It's just different. So I totally get that, how that, like, you're fine, and then suddenly it's not. Days later looking at your child who's gone.
Yeah. It's so hard.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
So hard.
And so much different than some people's experience. And I, like you, I would have hated to see him deteriorate in some ways. But it's so much of, you're not supposed to die on the side of the road. Right? Totally. You're supposed to make it to the hospital. I should have been able to see him in the hospital. But they didn't even. I mean, he went straight to the morgue. He didn't go to the hospital. He went straight to the morgue.
Yeah.
And I just, as a doctor, I think in the medical field, you feel like people make it to the hospital, right?
Totally. Yes, I do. Yeah. And my mother-in-law took a picture of her when she was in the hospital, like after they had called it. And it took me a little bit to want to see that picture, but and honestly, it's the last picture. She looks like herself, even with, you know, tubes and things. Like, she looks like her, because that first time seeing her at the funeral home, she didn't look like her, you know, and that was really, really hard. We went, so her celebration of life was on Friday, and Saturday she was going to be cremated. And they said, you know, you could be there, you can, whatever, you can see them put her in, all these things. And I was like, I just want to be in the building. Like, I just can't let her do this alone. Like, I just need to, you know, be there for whatever reason. And so we go in and we get to see her one more time. And she looked very much like herself, but she was in a cardboard box. And I was just like, how is that? It was awful. Yeah. It was so awful, but she looked like her, like the most that she had looked like her since. So in that sense, we were, you know, lucky to see her again. But how many times do you keep going back, you know, like before you just have to do it, you know, and 5 hours later, I don't know, pick up a bag of ashes. It's just, your mind just can't wrap itself, you know.
It's just so.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. That's right. It just doesn't make sense. And you just can't get your mind to think this is ever happening. It just is so.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, even still, 8 months later, it's so surreal. Like, I just still am not.
I have to tell you, 3 years later, I still have moments where I think to myself, I cannot believe this is my life. And I can't believe he's gone. You know, it's just, and it's 3 years. And I think about, he should be a senior in high school this year. And so, you know, his friends are seniors in high school, and that's been difficult. I think just thinking about those things that should be happening, and we should be looking to colleges, and we should be doing all this stuff, and yet we're not, right? We're not.
It's such a surreal It's a real thing.
I think for you, this month of December coming up will be so hard.
Yeah.
Right? To have her birthday and then
So hard.
and the holidays and
Yeah. So hard. So the day she was born, we're big Denver Broncos fans,
okay.
football. And the day she was born, the Broncos played the Chargers at home and we beat them. And the only game we went to in 2020 was Broncos Chargers, and we took Stevie with us and we beat the Chargers. And so we were like, any game that, the Broncos play the Chargers is going to be Stevie's tailgate, and we're going to do it big. And this year it's on her birthday weekend.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Get to kind of start that this year, which will be, I think, a good way for all of us to kind of, have a moment to remember and to honor her for sure. So that'll be November 28th this year, which will be awesome.
Okay, so we all have to cheer for the Broncos. I don't care
Yes.
where you're from, listeners. If you are from California, it does not matter. You have got to be a Broncos fan that weekend for sure.
Exactly. Yes, it'll be fun.
It'll be fun.
So it'll be good. So
Oh.
like they say, one day at a time. Sometimes I feel like it's 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. People say like, oh, time and things. I feel like it's almost gets harder. It's not getting any easier. This is never, I feel like there's, in my grief journey, I'm definitely right now struggling with the further we get away. Doesn't mean that she doesn't matter or isn't loved, but it's a hard thing to just keep moving forward and keep going. Every time I go to look at pictures of her, it's further back in my phone. I have to scroll to get there, and it takes a stab at your heart every time. I mean, it's just little things like that it's hard.
I thought of that just the other day so I have an iPhone, and you know how iPhone, they give you like pictures every day. They give you like a little group of pictures. Mm-hmm. And it struck me, it used to be that all the pictures in it, except for maybe one or two, would have Andy in it. And now they don't. Now it's like half, maybe less than half sometimes. And that makes me so sad. And I was just doing this yesterday. I was looking at them all, and they have the dates of them all. And I'm like, before the death and after the death. And how many of them were before August 15th, 2018, and how many were after, and just the smiles of people. I don't know. It's like I'm torturing myself. I know when I do that, but
it's what goes through your head constantly that that doesn't get talked about a lot, and it's so true. And I feel like it's there's 2 time periods in my life, and it's before Stevie died and after Stevie died, and really that's like how my life is will forever be broken up now.
You were
different.
Absolutely right. That's exactly what I think of. Days before August 15th, 2018 and days after, and it just is such a sudden shift in my life. I know there are parts of me that are the same, right? There are parts of us that are the same, but so much of me is different. I think that can be hard for other people to understand too. How you're just different to the core.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everything. I mean, everything you thought about life and your future or your present moment, everything is completely different. I remember in the very beginning, few weeks after Stevie died, like going out as a family or going, to the store. I didn't go very many places, but when we did, just the 3 of us, and it was like, we're missing something. It just constantly, we're missing this piece, and you just see it every day. You feel it every day. It's such a hard thing. Even just walking out of the door to go to the store, to go grocery shopping, and you feel like you're missing something, and other people just don't see that. They're like, oh, great, you got out and went to the store. But like, what's going on in your head is, I'm doing this without my daughter, and that part, it's hard. And you can't, you don't want to feel like you're constantly seeing, I think people would look at it and think maybe you're, being negative constantly, like she's gone, she's missing, she's not here, but like everything is a reminder of that,
And that's honestly is what's happening in your head. I mean, I can think personally,
Mm-hmm.
that is what would happen in my head, where I would be doing something and it'd be completely unrelated to Andy, and trying to just do something sort of normal. And my
Mm-hmm.
mind would be screaming in my head, Andy's dead. Andy's dead. How can you be doing this?
Yep.
Andy's dead. Right?
Yep.
And it's like, and I
Yep.
feel like it screamed that in my head so continuously, because so a part of me didn't believe it. And like, I was like having a battle in my
Mm-hmm.
own mind with the
Yeah,
part of me
totally.
that just didn't believe it. And the part of me was like, this is true. You need to believe it. And so they were constantly at war with each other,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get you to believe it. And sometimes
Totally.
I just didn't want to. I just
Yeah.
didn't want to believe it. I just wanted to say,
Yeah.
you know what? Let's just pretend that Andy's at school
Mm-hmm.
today. Like, I just can't
Mm-hmm.
do this today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that, I feel like right now, 8 months later, is what I am
Yeah.
struggling with. Like, there's a part of me that I feel like a little kid inside my body, and I'm going to kick and scream and roll on the ground and say, this isn't happening. This isn't real. I'm not going to accept it, because if I accept it, she's further away, and I'm not doing that. And so I'm like having this internal struggle daily, behind closed door. People can't hear what's going on in my head, but it's a constant thing. Like, I am not going to accept this because she's further away if I do. And it's hard. It's really hard.
It really is. And I feel like after 6 months, things got harder. And in general, people
Yes.
think it's been 6 months. You're definitely going to be better now.
You're getting
You're gonna be
better.
better now than you were 6 months ago. But I think it's worse. I think it's worse because
I agree.
the shock
Completely.
and the disbelief is there, and it's numbing. It can numb that for a while, and I think it lasts 6 months.
Mhm.
I feel like I can now. I feel
Yeah.
like I have had enough experience talking to other people that I could say I don't think this is a unique
Yeah.
experience to me. I think this is universal.
Yeah.
That it lasts a good 6
Totally.
months that you feel like I'm just in shock, and you're not even having the mind games in your head like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to believe it. Like right now, you're having a battle in your head. Like, I'm not going to believe it because if I start to believe it, it will become more real. You're just not. The first 6 months, you just don't. And
Yeah.
it's not like there's a battle in
Yeah.
your head. You just don't believe it. It's not happening. This isn't real.
Yeah.
And certainly at times you know that it is real, but it's shock just is this numbing shock. And
Mhm.
that starts to wear off.
Yep.
And when that numbing shock wears off, the pain is, right?
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. And it's a pain that I can't describe other than to say, like, my soul is on fire. Like, there are times I lay in bed at night and like you just can't catch your breath, and you're just like laying there, like, it's just a pain that I can't describe and that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Like, it is absolutely, and in those moments is so unbearable. It's horrible. It's awful. It's so hard.
so what are some things that have kind of brought you a little bit of peace?
I think keeping her memory alive
Yeah.
with Charlie, because Charlie, her young innocence, we were in a hot tub, this was months ago, and it was dark, and we were up in the mountains, and she points up and she goes, "Hi, Stevie. Hi, I miss you," like pointing at the stars. And I just like crumbled. And it's just those little moments that she brings it out. Yesterday, and it randomly happens, and it doesn't happen every day, but the way the sun hit the window on the front door made a rainbow on the floor, and she like lays down next to it, and she'll kiss it and talk to it, and like, it's those moments that, like, I don't know, just really bring me peace, that like she's not going to forget, and that us as a family, that we can move forward together. I think those are,
That you're going to make it.
yeah. And I think those are like the biggest, watching Charlie's love for Stevie still be alive. It's huge.
And what a great lesson that is for us too, because I I think back even to therapists that I saw and how I felt like I needed to be sad all of the time in some ways, because if I let
Mhm.
go of the sadness at every moment, I was somehow letting go of
Mhm.
Andy.
Yes.
And I remember my therapist saying to me, it's not the grief that holds you to him, it's the love. It's the love that holds you to him.
Mhm.
And Charlie lives that. I mean, she is a living
Mhm.
example of that. Of the love
Yeah.
is what holds you to Stevie. And I mean, what a
Mhm.
great example for her to give that to you all the time, to help you remember
Yeah.
that if you let go of some of that deep sorrow at some point,
Mhm.
when you are willing to let go of that, it can be, I mean, it's okay. And it's not meaning that you're letting go of
Mhm.
Stevie
Yeah.
at all, because in some ways,
Totally.
if you let go of some of that, some of those negative emotions and work through some of those negative emotions, the love can fill your heart once again
Mhm.
and show you,
Yeah.
this is how I love her. This is how I honor her. This is what I do. And what a better way
Yeah.
to live. It's just needing to get to that point, right? And
Mhm.
get past the guilt and get past all of that to get to that point of accepting that I just want to show love, me for Andy, you for Stevie,
Totally.
in every part of my life and
Yep.
everything that I do. If I can just show it
Yeah.
instead of
Mhm.
all the sadness all the time.
Yeah. It's a real thing. I remember the first time we had family over and a big barbecue and we took a big group picture and I remember thinking like I want to grab her picture and hold it like for the we were here at our house and but I don't want people to think like I'm weird like taking and this was just a few months after it happened and I was like, okay, and I didn't do it. And I just remember being like, I didn't like the way that felt. And I told Dalton that and he goes, I almost did the same
Oh,
thing. And I was like, okay, well then I'm forever going to do that. So when Charlie's birthday party in June happened here, we grabbed her picture and took a picture holding, and Charlie like loves it. She is so into it. And like I said, taking her picture around, or there's a picture of her eating and Charlie will take it and have breakfast with her and talk to her and sit there. So
I
it's
just
it's
love that.
nice.
She is doing an amazing job of keeping Stevie alive.
Yeah,
Wow.
and like innocence and she doesn't understand what she's doing, but it is like such a huge thing for her dad and I. Like
And
it's
it brings
amazing.
you such hope and healing,
It
really.
really is.
And it makes it
Yeah,
more okay.
it does.
Like if
Hmm.
she wants to take her picture down and
Yeah,
have breakfast with her, then you don't have to hide your grief from
yeah,
her. You know that, like,
exactly. Then
okay,
I can.
you know what? I can do that too. That's not that weird.
Mhm. And so we do that. We say good morning and we talk to her and that's just part of our everyday lives now. That's just what we do. And I think it just allows her to express herself. Like I said, she can't say, having a bad day, I'm really missing my sister, but she will go grab her picture and sit with her in color or whatever it is. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, that is amazing to see. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you feel like you really wanted to share with the audience today?
I think, just in any aspect of any age, of any ways that our children have died, I think we understand something that not everybody does, and we are just have to be there for each other. Like it's a hurt and a pain that nobody will ever understand, but we can
Yeah.
share it with each other. I think is the biggest.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
We were talking at our my grief support group that I'm facilitating last night about having a dive team around you, having your team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that having some other bereaved parents on that team
Mm-hmm.
can be really helpful. Because my group that I have,
Yeah.
it's primarily people that are pretty early in their grief, and a lot of them don't have that yet. And I think it will
Mm-hmm.
bless them when they get it. And yeah,
When they
yeah.
do. Yeah,
It's just they're a very precious part of your team.
I get that.
I was putting together, writing down my team last night and seeing how many bereaved parents were on there, and then thinking about how it's a vastly different team than had I written that list down 2 years ago. So your team can change, and yeah,
And that's okay.
that's okay. And I think it's good. I
Yeah.
think it's good that it changes, that it's
Mm-hmm.
not the same. It means we're growing and we're changing too.
Totally. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for agreeing to share the story of
What you do.
your Stevie
Yes.
with us today. I have really loved learning about her.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.